Welcome back to a brand new episode of the Kellyanne Cares podcast. Today, I'm sharing an incredible conversation I had with my good friend, Cheryl McColgan. Cheryl is the founder and editor of Heal Nourish Grow, an ultimate wellness, healthy lifestyle, and advanced nutrition site. She helps others develop the confidence and habits to create lasting change and greater health by sharing her wealth of knowledge and over 25 years of experience in psychology, addiction studies, fitness, nutrition, yoga, meditation, and overall health and wellness. Coaching others to reach their personal version of ultimate wellness is her passion, and Cheryl also hosts the Heal Nourish Grow podcast, which is a show dedicated to sharing information about all aspects of healthy lifestyle and weight loss. Cheryl posts keto food ideas daily in her Instagram stories, and more in-depth recipes can be found, as well as research and wellness content over on healnourishgrow.com. You guys, this episode is packed with so much knowledge and insight from Cheryl. I cannot wait for you to hear it. Let's get into today's show. Oh my God, you guys, I'm so excited. My on-demand summer coaching experiences are here. And, every day I'm asked a lot of the same questions from other online business owners and other entrepreneurs and different individuals who are just looking to level up right now, and they need some kind of on-demand service. So as the queen of creating things that need to exist, I did just that. This is where you get access to me 5 days a week through voice and text support, and I'll throw in some video, and you get a 15-minute call with me every 7 days, because accountability and support, I think, are two key factors that you need when it comes to running your business, and I'm going to be here for you. I'm going to be in your back pocket all summer long, starting today, the day you join. So we're going to get you organized. We're going to be in your house, in your digital space, brainstorming for the creatives, implementing new systems and procedures and operations, everything that you need in your business and your personal life. I'm here to help you get there. Maybe you have a new brand. Maybe you need to update your LinkedIn strategy. Maybe you need tips on how to grow your podcast. All of this is included in my on-demand service. Maybe it's marketing or setting up some passive income or revenue streams. There's just so many ways that I can help you, and I wanted to make something super accessible for everyone. So whether you need help personally or professionally, I'm here, and my on-demand summer coaching experiences are now available. Head to kellyanngorman.com, check out the show notes, and join today. Welcome to Kellyanne Cares, a one-of-a-kind show created to motivate, stimulate, educate, and inspire you, personally and professionally. Hi, I'm Kelly. I'm an entrepreneur, patient advocate, content creator, and author. You may know me from the Everything is Messy book, brand, and podcast. But what you may not know is how hard I had to work to get me to where I am today. Mentally, physically, emotionally, and spiritually. I'm a firm believer that everything happens for a reason. And in this season, I'm more driven and extremely passionate about my purpose: to help you save the time, money, and energy it takes to be happier and get healthier with your mind, body, business, and life. Tune in every week to hear raw, unfiltered conversations from myself and my incredible guests as we discuss trending topics, share stories of resilience, and chat about all things health, wealth, healing, and wellness. Whether you're here to listen, learn, or laugh, I promise to bring awareness and add more value to your day. Take this time to relax and recharge. Listen, life is short. Invest in yourself. Be loud, be different, be you, and most importantly, enjoy the ride. Buckle up, because today's podcast experience starts now. One more thing, sharing is caring. I would love your thoughts on today's episode. Head on over to Apple Podcasts to rate, review, and subscribe. I would truly appreciate it. Want to continue the conversation? Let's connect online. You can find me at kellyanngorman.com, and all my social links are in the show notes. Now let's get into today's show. Hi, Cheryl. How are you? Welcome to the show.
So good. Thank you so much for having me, Callie.
I'm so excited you're here because I want to talk all things healing, nourishing, and growing. But first, let's just get a little backstory on you on how you got into the field that you're in right now.
Okay, so like many people, I started having a little extra weight gain as I got older. And but to give a little backstory, I've kind of tried almost every diet there is, and I've always been very focused on health and wellness. And so when I got to this point in my life, and I was, in my mid 40s, I was traveling a ton for work. I was actually going all over the world producing tech conferences, and I was separated and going through a divorce. And so it was just a really stressful time in my life where I had started to put on some weight. And like many people, the older you get, it becomes a little more challenging. And so I was trying to figure out, like, what do I need to do to figure this out? And around that same time, my dad had been diagnosed with cancer for the second time, actually. And I started, kind of digging around because I thought, okay, there's some things that I had in my past. I had some tumors. They were non-cancerous, thankfully, but I just started making me get a lot more serious about my health. I'm like, I really need to dig in here and do more research and see if there's anything that I can do, not only to help my future prospects with cancer, but also, drop some of this weight that I've put on. And so I just started really taking a pretty big deep dive. And that was around 2016. And one of the things I ran across in doing some research was the 2016 Nobel Prize winner was for autophagy. And autophagy is basically your body's cellular cleanup process. And, I'd seen it mentioned in relation to cancer. And there's a couple ways. I mean, autophagy is happening all the time on a continuum. Don't think of it as like an on-off switch. It's kind of, every night when you go to sleep, some of this is happening. But it happens a lot more strongly when you're fasting, which means, you're not eating any food, or with exercise. And so there's a couple ways to activate autophagy. But I was familiar with fasting from all my years in the yoga space. It's definitely done as a spiritual practice in that world, and a lot of cleanses and all kinds of things that us crazy health people get into, right? So when I heard fasting was a way to really activate autophagy, I thought, okay, well, this is great because it could be good for some of this extra weight, and it's also going to help me, hopefully, knock on wood, prevent some cancer in my future. And so I initially got started with fasting, and I found that it was okay. I could do it. Like, I'd always done it to some degree, like I said, being involved with yoga. But it was definitely a little bit challenging. And so that's when I started looking more into that. That's when I stumbled upon keto and eating low carb. And I thought, wow, this is very different for me, having been a vegetarian for like 7 years. I was still a vegetarian at the time when I started discovering all this stuff. And but I wasn't feeling great. And obviously, like I said, I had all this extra stress. So when I started like kind of reading some of the benefits of keto, how people were doing it, I just decided to give it a try. I'm like, why not? I'd been, eating tons of carbs all my life, and, but I'd always been much more active and younger and you get away with a lot more. So I thought, well, I'll just give it a try. So initially I just went low carb, and I did that for about a year, started feeling a whole lot better, started getting a handle on my weight, even though I was still, traveling in stress and bad sleep. That, you got to have those things in order because your diet will only go so far. And then about a year later, I went all the way to keto, which is a very low carb diet. And really the weight came off more easily than I ever had to happen in my entire life. But really the main thing, the real beauty of it was my blood sugar started to really regulate, and I just felt really even all the time. My mood was so much better. My brain was more clear. But the beauty of what having regulated blood sugar does for you, it allows you to fast a lot easier. So that initial, idea, that protocol that I'd taken on as a means to hopefully prevent me from having a future of cancer became a lot more easy to do. And so one really supported the other. And so now I've been doing it ever since then, have never thought twice about it. It's fairly, gets a bad rap, I think, in some things, but it's basically a variation on the Mediterranean diet, which pretty much everyone agrees is very healthy. Mm-hmm. And on top of that, I think the sustainability of it is just like once you start eating real whole foods, you lose a lot of the cravings, and, it all just builds on each other and becomes, a lot easier the longer you do it and the more you get used to it.
I agree. And I love that backstory. And I really, what I really appreciate about you is that you provide all this information just like any other coach would online, right? But what you do that's different is you show the science and the back end and the facts. It's not a diet, it's a lifestyle. And when you form these great habits, it becomes a great lifestyle. And I think something else that people don't really talk about a lot is sleep and stress and what that does to your body and your overall diet, not dieting, but like what you're putting in your mouth. But I've experienced it where I'm super stressed and my stomach is, I look pregnant and I'm like, oh my God, that's stress. Like it's insane what these two things do, and not being able to sleep. And I mean, I traveled for like at least a decade, and never sleeping. And I'm like, oh my God, my skin. And now I'm like obsessed with the sauna and obsessed with fasting. And I do it for reasons to like improve my overall health, not just drop like 50 pounds, you know? And what I really like about you is that you prove that. You showcase all these science-backed facts, but also on your podcast, you bring on experts as well. And that's why I wanted you to come on, because I love that you show all of this online, because there's so many other people that are just like, here's keto, here's my recipes. You're like, no, like I've been doing this for so long and this is why. So I really appreciate that you shared all that.
Yeah, thank you. And I think that that's one of my keys anytime I'm trying to help some people with habit change, because I think you and I have known each other online for a while.
Oh, yeah.
I think you probably already know this, but maybe everybody else doesn't, is that my degree is in psychology and my minor's in addiction studies. And I actually have some graduate training in clinical psychology as well. And so for me, anytime I'm looking at, I think I will say one thing. I think I've kind of been natural, and I don't want to say naturally blessed with discipline. I think it's the way that I was raised and the way that I grew up, is that I probably have a slightly easier time than some people of it being pretty disciplined. It's just because I've just always done it. But really what that shows me is it's a muscle. It's like anything else. You have to practice things. You have to just be consistent. I mean, I'm not going to say every single day that I want to make, the exact perfect choice, but what it is just deciding that you're that person now, that you're the healthy person now, right? And you make your decisions kind of based on that and based around that, and also what your long-term goals are. My long-term goals are that I want to be around for some hopefully grandchildren, not anytime real soon, in the future. And obviously with all the cancer that's so prevalent in my immediate family, I think that there's a real chance that could be in my future. And so and this is so cliche because a lot of people do say it, but I think it's very true, is when you really identify your deep why, like not just wanting to look good in a swimsuit or whatever it is, you identify with something that's a little, for the lack of a better word, like just bigger than that, bigger than weight loss. That makes making those decisions and staying consistent every day that much easier. If you're just kind of like, oh, I'm going to lose weight for the wedding, or I'm going to lose weight for an event, and then the event comes and goes, and then what? That's when people start to struggle. They don't know how to maintain it once they've gotten there, because people can lose weight pretty easily, and you can use, there's all kinds of different ways to do it. But what makes it something that actually supports your health and that you can make it a lifestyle, that's a whole different story. And that's really the key to it to me.
That was one of my questions. Cheryl, we're always on the same page. What is your why? I wanted you to share your why. I think that well, you know this story, but I got into intermittent fasting when I was withdrawing from all these medications that I was on years ago, from when I was misdiagnosed. And I first found the medical medium, and then I started researching and finding all these brain doctors, and they were like, intermittent fasting, intermittent fasting. I'm like, there's no way I can do that. Like, no way. And I grew up like you, like super disciplined. So I think we have an upper hand in that, but it doesn't come easy for everybody. And I'm like, okay, let me try. I don't even remember what it felt like, to be honest, because withdrawing from that amount of drugs is really difficult. I don't remember a lot, but I do remember it being easy. Like, I don't remember having a struggle in the beginning. And I still do it. Like, I actually just had my protein shake, which is really early for me right now at 10. But normally I do 8 at night till at least like noon. And I have no issues with that whatsoever. And I'm a huge meal prepper, as you know. So I always like line up the mason jars, line up the meals. Like, and that's just discipline.
Yeah.
Like, and because I'm super busy and I've always been like that. I just like everything organized. But I think that the benefits of intermittent fasting, I mean, you need to give your body a break and digest and just rest, especially after going hard on whatever you're working on that day or just living your life, period,
No, absolutely. And that is kind of the problem, because we've evolved into this lifestyle, not only where food is fairly abundant all the time, but also for years, people would start to say something like, oh, well, you need to eat every couple of hours to keep your metabolism going. And that became very prevalent. But where that was from was more like all these like super hardcore fitness people, weightlifters, people that have vastly different goals than the majority of the rest of us that kind of sit on our butt like most of the day, working and not being super active. And so those are two very different, lifestyles as far as activity, and of course how you eat and what you eat should
Mm-hmm.
kind of support that. I mean, if you're very, very active, you can get away with a lot more carbs and you can still be in ketosis. I mean, for me, I'm pretty active. I'm not a weightlifter or anything like that by any means, but I'm fairly active, and I'm very metabolically healthy at this point, especially after years of doing this. So I can get away with eating more carbs and still stay in ketosis. But if you're a person that is maybe overweight or maybe just metabolically inflexible, and by the way, this is a crazy stat, but it's out of UNC North Carolina, only 12% of Americans are actually metabolically healthy, which is really scary.
Oh my God.
So if you're in that 88% of everybody else metabolically unhealthy, your body is very unlikely to be able to tolerate carbs very well. And that's why people start to have so many issues like gaining weight, like having a bad A1C, which is basically the measure of your last 3-month average of your blood sugar. And plenty of people are pre-diabetic or diabetic and don't even know it yet because it's not really focused on that much by doctors unless you ask for those numbers. And you could be pre-diabetic for years and your doctor never even says anything, which is just kind of crazy to me.
You know how I feel about doctors.
Yes, I do. And they don't know everything. It's unfortunate because, they're in a system that makes it very difficult for them to interact with patients very well and to have the time to go through some of these things.
Mm-hmm. That's the thing. It's time. You get 15 minutes.
It really is.
But it is also, which I've always preached, is it's also the patient's job to make sure their records are organized and make sure you're doing the work and following up. Unfortunately, like that's how it needs to be. But like unless you're taking care of yourself, like you're going to rely on a doctor that doesn't give you the correct time of day and the correct diagnosis. Like that's just how it is, unfortunately. Can you explain to the audience, for those listening that do not understand, what ketosis is?
Yes.
Because everybody knows keto, but they don't understand what ketosis means. Like, can you explain that so that they can understand? Because everybody talks about keto food, more protein, less carbs, but like, what does your body actually do and feel like when you're in ketosis?
Yeah, so this is a great question because you're right. I think people kind of just associate the word with a diet now, but what ketosis actually stands for is it's a metabolic process in your body. And the only way to access this alternative is really an alternative energy pathway. So your other pathway for energy is glucose and glycogen. So you eat food and people don't think this too, you eat bread, that's carbs, that's glucose, that's glycogen. At the base, it breaks down into sugar in your body. So in some ways, a piece of bread and a piece of fruit and a candy bar are the same to your body in a way. Like take the nutrients aside, but the way that the sugars are broken down to use for energy, it breaks it down so that you can use the glucose and then it's stored in your muscles in the form of glycogen. And so the metabolic process of ketosis is an alternative energy pathway in which your body uses ketones. And so how ketones happen is instead of being a sugar burner, so when you stop eating excess carbs, and eventually your body will even go into your muscles and take the glycogen stores out of the muscles. So then your liver starts to break down fats, and it can be either the fats that you're eating or it can be your body fat, which is what most of us want to get rid of, right? So your liver breaks these down and creates ketones. And ketones can act as it's actually a preferred energy source for your brain. And so some of the effects of that, I think you said something a little while back about the effects, is like you get so much better mental clarity because it really is accessible to your brain in a very easy way for energy. Where what happens, and they're now starting to call dementia type 3 diabetes, is because over time,
really, wow,
and especially if you have been abusing carbs and sugar for your whole life, eventually the neurons in the brain aren't very good at using sugar for energy anymore, and that's where they think some of these processes of dementia happens over time. And so the nice thing is, though, it doesn't matter how damaged your neurons have been at that point from using sugar, they can always use ketones as an energy source. And that's actually some interesting work. Dr. Mary Newport has done some work around Alzheimer's and using MCT oil and exogenous ketones for treating dementia. And her husband had it, so this was very near and dear to her heart. But that's just one example of what they're finding about ketones. They're a signaling mechanism in the body, but you can only get ketones in your body. Well, you can drink them. That's an exogenous source, which means outside the body. But to create them in your body, you have to restrict carbs. That's really the only way to get there. So that's ketosis.
Thank you for that definition. That's a very easy way of explaining it and understanding it. Now, I want to talk to you about carbs. So I love bread, and I'm obsessed with.
I do too.
Yeah, and I'm obsessed with labels. And obviously, we're going to get into your books, but when I was researching for mine, I was like, okay, I want to make sure that each recipe is under $20. It's accessible, because I think like the biggest myth in this country, especially, is eating healthy is so expensive, but it's actually the opposite. And I know, because in the middle of the pandemic, I had to price match, and I was doing all my research for my book, and I went to like the 25 options of a market we have here, and I wanted to make sure that the pricing was, again, under $20 for each meal and easy for a family to make or somebody to like meal prep like me for the week. Now, if you were to eat bread, do you think so with my research, and I could totally be wrong, I think sourdough could be the best option, but like, what do you eat? Like, what is the best bread option if you're going to eat it, do you think?
Yes, I would agree. Sourdough, because of the fermentation process in sourdough, some of the carbs that would naturally be in the bread, and then also, for some reason, I think it makes the glycemic index, which the glycemic index is how quickly the carbs affect your blood sugar, basically. So, for example, if you eat table sugar, that like really goes immediately into your bloodstream, creating a lot of blood sugar really quickly. So it's like a quick spike if you're thinking of like a little chart. Whereas some carbs are like slower to absorb. So particularly like something that has a lot of fiber in it, even though if it has carbs. So something like an avocado has like not a ton of carbs, but also has fat and fiber. So it like disperses very evenly through your blood sugar. So as far as the best bread option, I mean, honestly, it's hard to eat much bread and really stay in ketosis if that's your goal. You can definitely incorporate bread if you're just doing low carb. And then all the keto sources of bread, like they're usually made with almond flour or coconut flour. And I'm just going to be honest, like the bread replacements, there's just nothing like real bread.
Yeah, I know.
It's very hard to replace that.
I have a vegan pizza dough recipe in my book, and that took me forever to nail, because I was like, it has to taste like pizza.
Yeah,
and
I will
it was
say
difficult.
For pizza, that's one that's a little bit easier to make a good low carb replacement, but for just like a nice piece of really good bread, it's very difficult to have something that tastes like that.
You know, you spoke about the glycemic index, and I believe it was a dietitian I saw on TikTok like a couple weeks ago. And she said, if you're going to have sugar, peanut M&Ms are like the best option because they're the lowest. I was like, oh, good to know. I don't know. I saw that. Yeah.
I don't know if I would totally agree with that. The only thing I can say is because it's got the peanut in there, so it's got obviously some fat and protein at the same time. But
I know everybody always has their own
quality basis. That wouldn't be my first choice.
I know. I always get dark chocolate. I like to make my own like little Reese's cups with like almond butter, crunchy almond butter, and like just pure dark chocolate. It's super bitter, but with a red glass of wine, like I feel like you're complete.
Especially and actually dark chocolate, you can get a lot of dark chocolates that aren't even labeled as quote unquote keto, but if you really look at the sugar content of those, and honestly sometimes
there's barely any.
A choice like having something that is the real thing if you really want it versus a poor substitute, that's also something to really consider, because especially if you're in a situation where you are metabolically healthy, you don't have diabetes, I mean, occasionally having something that you really love, I think, make it intentional, make it a choice, be mindful when you're having it, enjoy every bite, and have like a real piece of sourdough or something, because because you can. But if you're diabetic or you're severely overweight or whatever, maybe that's not your best choice in that moment. And that's where I think the stuff that I work on, trying to, really have people think about habits and their long-term goals, I think it makes it a lot easier to make these decisions and like feel good about it, feel good about what you're doing for your body versus just, eating something randomly without a lot of thought.
So true. Like once a month, I always get my little pistachio slice of cake from my local market. It's like $8 for one slice because it's this
Oh,
high-end
wow.
market. But it's my favorite, and that's my little treat. And now I realize because I eat so clean, I literally have a hangover the next day from the amount of sugar that's in that.
Yeah.
I'm not used to that anymore.
Maybe you still have it, and maybe just have half of it and freeze half of it for next. The more you eat like this,
Yeah.
the more you start being more intentional with your decisions. You do realize things like that, and then you make a decision like, "Hey, is this worth this in this moment?" And sometimes it is, and sometimes it's not, and you just got to keep evaluating that over time.
I did do that last month. I was like, I can't even like finish this. Well, I don't know why I was like trying to. I was like, I honestly just wanted a bite. It was like a ritual every month.
Yeah.
No.
You're onto something with that. Like that's very real. The ritual of something and the idea of something is sometimes all you need. Maybe you don't need the whole thing.
I just wish they made like minis.
Yeah, that would be better.
The actual cake itself is like a wedding cake. It's so huge. And they're like, oh, we're out of the slices. Do you want the cake? I'm like, first of all, it's like $80. Second of all, no.
Oh, gosh.
I know. So I want to share a little bit. I want you to share a little bit about your podcast because I love it. And I want you to share with the audience what they can expect when they tune into your show. So tell us the name, what it's about, the guests that you talk to, all the good stuff. As you may or may not know, I am somebody that is obsessed with all things organization and productivity. And if it's going to save me time, money, and energy, I'm here for it. Head on over to kellyannegorman.com, click on the page Brand Deals. The link will be in the show notes, and check out all of my favorite brands. I'm talking coffee. I'm talking credit building. I'm talking saving money by scanning your receipts. All things podcasting, business, organization, delivery services, travel. I have a whole list for you. They're going to save you time, money, and energy. That is something I'm so passionate about. So I wanted to share that with you as well. And while you're there, don't forget to sign up for my weekly newsletter on kellyandgorman.com or over on my LinkedIn. Now let's get back into today's show.
Okay, so it's called the Heal Nourish Grow podcast, on brand, right?
Yes, of course.
But I was initially going to name it something with keto or something with low carb. But then I moved away from that because really what I've been all about my whole life is overall health and wellness. And, I didn't want to limit it. I wanted to be able to talk to people about different things other than just keto, even though, of course, nutrition and that kind of lifestyle is a huge part of my focus. And I'm biased, obviously, because I believe that it really creates better health. And that most people, given what I said about 88% of people being metabolically unhealthy, it really would benefit most people to just, if nothing else, just eat lower carb. And, not going all the way to keto and eat more whole foods. Like that's the first place to start. But I didn't want to limit it to that. So who I've been talking to mostly, and I think I'm just about up to 30 episodes now.
I'm interrupting today's episode really quickly to remind you how much reviews mean to us podcasters. They honestly help us create more of the content that you love and bring on more of the guests that you want to hear from. So after listening today, head on over to Apple Podcasts, YouTube, and your favorite podcast app and leave a review for the brand new show, Kellyanne Cares. I would truly appreciate it. And if you want to continue the conversation, head on over to the brand new community on TikTok. You can find me at Kellyanne Gorman Official. Now let's get back into today's show. Yay!
I definitely talk to industry experts, whether it's in nutrition, whether it's in, I just had a conversation recently with a functional orthodontist, which was really interesting. So talking all about how your mouth health in relation to overall health, and then also in relation to ADHD, the way you breathe. There's some very interesting connections that he was finding, and he's very holistic. So just having conversations with people like that, thought leaders around the health space. And then I also talk to people that have just lived a low carb lifestyle for a while and like their experience with it and how it's been sustainable to really kind of debunk that idea that there's something about this that's difficult or hard. It's really how we evolved to eat. And so when people are wondering about how to eat, I think, well, just think about, what our ancestors were eating 1,000 years ago, 10,000 years ago. We didn't have grocery stores. We didn't have access to all this food. We certainly did not have processed sugar.
Oh my God. Yeah. The middle aisles.
We didn't evolve to eat like this. It's crazy. So, and I'm not going to say like after we've all grown up, eating a bunch of sugar, eating things out of a box, all that, is it that easy to go the other way? Maybe not for some people. It might be very challenging, but that doesn't mean it's not what's right for you and for your health, if that's really a goal. And so that's really what I try to cover on my show, is just all different ways, all different aspects of looking at health, at wellness, any kind of practices that are going to make you look and feel better. That's what I try to cover on the show.
I'm excited to hear about the orthodontist. So one of my clients, I developed her show a couple years ago. She is a dental hygienist, and she started working, I feel like it was right before the pandemic, for a functional dentist. I've never heard of the orthodontist, but it's so funny because at that specific time, I was researching, or I came across, and then I went down like my deep hole of research about everything mouth related. So that's when I started tongue scraping and how everything starts like with your dental work, because that's when I was getting my implants done and I was going through like all of my dental work, and I would ask my dentist and they would confirm things, and I'm like, why isn't anybody talking about this? Everybody's talking about the food, but it's the food and everything you put in your mouth. Like it starts with your dental hygiene. I was listening to, oh shoot, I forget his name, but he said that actual mouthwash every day is like the worst possible thing that you could be using.
That's interesting, but it kind of makes sense.
Yeah.
I wonder if you're, I don't know, because your mouth has a microbiome too, and so does your skin, and every part of you kind of finds balance in some way. I mean, obviously you need to get the things out of your teeth, but a lot of these crazy carnivore people, they're not even, they're, because when you don't eat sugar, you're not getting all that stuff on your teeth. So they're just like kind of rinsing. And I think not even, I don't want to say not brushing, because I don't want to go. I don't know if they're going that far, but they're definitely using like alternative oral care kinds of things. So
that's a good way of putting it.
Again, which I would like to at some point off to ask him what he thinks about that.
I know, it was really interesting. And I don't know, that was my latest obsession. And now I'm really into the natural deodorant and how you detox, because your armpits are like the biggest area where you should focus on, where you should be doing like a clay detox and then move into like the natural deodorant, or just don't even use the natural deodorant. Just use the, what is it called? Bentonite clay with apple cider vinegar. And then you just make a paste, and then you just use coconut oil. I find these people late at night on TikTok, and then I go down a rabbit hole. I'm like, oh my God, they're right. But then I'm like always afraid to try that one myself. Okay, so let's pivot into your books. Tell the audience the name of your books, your process of how you write, and what we can expect from you that's coming out very soon.
So the one that's out right now is called The 21-Day Fat Loss Kickstart. Make keto easy, take diet breaks, and still lose weight.
Love it.
So that's kind of a mouthful, but the whole reason I started this, because I started this with two ideas. The first idea, I'll start off with the 21-day part, is that people often, on any kind of diet, doesn't matter what it is, they'll go for a while and they get stuck. They get on a plateau, or they quit making progress. And there's multiple reasons that this could be happening. But one of the reasons, I think, is because you've probably heard of this idea in fitness world about like muscle confusion or workout confusion. If you keep doing the same workout day after day, the same way, your body adjusts. Our bodies are so good at adapting. And it's the same way with what you eat. If you're not changing things up, if you're eating 1,200 calories a day, every day for weeks at a time, it'll work for a little while. But at some point, your body adjusts. It's like, I know I'm only getting 1,200 calories. I'm going to be super efficient with that. And pretty soon, you'll start to, be in a stall or not lose weight anymore. And so the 21-day protocol really shakes things up. It utilizes a few different things. It uses intermittent fasting, which we're both huge fans of. It uses extended fasting, which some people are not as familiar with, and it can seem a little scary to some people, but there's actually plenty of research to back that up as well. And of course, the book is, I think I have like 77 citations or something in the book. I could have had a lot more, but I was not trying to do a literature review. I was just trying to back it up. And then there are PSMF days, which is a protein-sparing modified fast. So basically that protocol was started by George Blackburn. I think it was back in the 60s or 70s. But they found it was for a way for people to be able to lose weight while protecting your muscle, which is the most important thing. So that's why it's called the Fat Loss Kickstart, not a weight loss kickstart. Because we don't want to just lose weight. That could be losing lean mass and fat. And that's not what you want. You want to lose just the fat as much as possible. I mean, it's nearly impossible to lose only fat. That's just proven out in research a lot. But you can definitely minimize the amount of lean mass that you lose while you're losing weight by, number one, eating the right amount of protein. Number two, doing some kind of weight training, like strength training. Those are the ways that you prevent muscle loss. And number three, eating properly, because if you're eating only a lot of carbs while you're really trying to lose weight, your body needs protein all the time. And so if it can't find it by what's coming in your body, eventually it's going to go seek it out somewhere inside of your body. So that's what the 21-day protocol, it shakes things up. Every day something different. One day you're doing just calorie restriction, but you're eating low carb. The other day you're fasting. The other day you're doing PSMF. So it's that whole thing. On the weekends, you're eating at maintenance, because let's be serious. That's what happens to everybody anyway. When I've gone through points of weight loss, you'll be good all week. And then you're kind of like, oh, it's the weekend. I want to have some drinks with my friends and do this and that. So giving people permission to, I'm not saying go overboard. You're still eating at a maintenance calorie level. But if you know that you're going to automatically be able to have a little more on the weekend, it's a great psychological trick. Because then during the week you're doing all that other stuff, but you're like, yeah, I'm going to go the weekend. I'm going to eat at maintenance calories. Everything's going to be good. And so there's a lot of like little psychology tricks kind of baked into this. But the other part about making keto easy, taking diet breaks and still lose weight, I think, this is the other thing that research has shown. If you go for weeks and weeks and weeks, months at a time, focused on weight loss, eating less calories, I mean, it slows your metabolism. It's not good for you long term. So if you can be a little patient, it'll take a little longer. But taking diet breaks is so good for you psychologically, and it's really good for your metabolism. And I don't feel like a lot of diet books ever talk about this.
No.
And so if you take them intentionally, then you're going to feel better mentally during that time where you're taking a break. It's not like you go off the rails and eat whatever you want. You're still eating at maintenance. You're working on these new habits, but it takes the focus off of weight loss for a little bit, because that's the other thing too, is people get in overwhelm about changing their diet or trying to lose weight and trying to start a new exercise program and then trying to get organized. Like, they do too many things at once. You just got to give yourself some mental space to just focus on one thing for a little bit while you're building these habits. And then you go back, you take this break, you go back and you do the 21 days again, where you're much more focused on all this, and you're still learning all these new tools. So anyway, that might have been a longer explanation than you wanted.
No, that's perfect.
But I just think it's pretty unique in the way that it approaches it compared to other things that I've seen.
But I also think that that's the culture that we live in. Why is somebody going to tell you to take a break? They want you to lose the weight, to sell more books or sell more, you know what I mean? There's no break.
Right.
Just keep going. What's the longest fast that you've ever done? Because I've seen a lot of people do a water fast, but that was more to detox from Lyme disease and they were sick. But what's the longest fast that you've ever done?
The longest one I've ever done personally is 5 days. And it's actually one of my more popular videos on YouTube. I don't know why. I think people just search for 5-day fast and come across it. And I've definitely changed my thinking a little bit over time, just based on the muscle loss thing. If you do shorter fasts, it's really not a thing. The research pretty much backs that up. Any lean mass that you theoretically lose in a shorter fast, they can kind of attribute to that autophagy process, right? So your body, if you're just looking at it logically, why would your body attack muscle, which is the most important thing that you have in your body? But however, it will attack extra skin or, all these damaged cells and misfolded proteins, which is the whole part of autophagy, why we think it's so good for cancer stuff. But if you start to go longer than that, then eventually your body might start to turn to other resources like muscle. And the older that we get, that's one of the biggest predictors of metabolic health and just overall disease outcomes. You've got to have some muscle mass. And so as I get older, I'm going to be 50 next year. Oh my God.
You do not look like you're 50.
Well, I
whatsoever.
Guess I'm into mostly healthy living and, being a little vain.
You just know how to take care of yourself. Some people just don't even care. So that's why they look the way they look. But if you actually take care of your mind, your body, your overall health and wellness, you look and feel like $1 million. If not, it's a different situation.
I definitely agree. agree with you. I think there is a big component of that, no doubt about it. But also just, good genes as well. But anyway, so I think that probably doing those much longer ones is, at my age, maybe not the best thing. I think if you're younger, you can definitely get away with those longer ones still. Plus, I've just noticed that whenever I have lower body fat, and I'm not saying I'm super low body fat right at the moment, but whenever I have lower body fat, that fasting is just a little more challenging. And I've never seen any studies or anything that talk about that, but I know just based on, like, if you look at the bodybuilding community, when they do shows and they go into that phase at the very end where they're really shredding, it just gets much more mentally challenging because your body wants to hold on to a certain amount of, like, kind of the bare minimum fat that you need to survive. And so I've just noticed that when I'm lower body fat, that is more challenging to fast for a longer period of time. So what I've settled on, instead of I used to do a 5-day fast every quarter for that purpose that we talked about before, not related to weight loss, just all related to trying to prevent cancer. But now I've settled on a 60-hour fast every month instead. And that's an amount of time that is, I think it strikes a good balance between just an intermittent fast on a day-to-day basis, which certainly gives you tons of benefit. But if you're really going for maximum autophagy and disease prevention, I think doing a more extended fast on a regular basis is important. So I've just kind of over time shifted my thinking on that a little bit, just the more that I've learned, and also obviously, getting a little older and thinking about, other things that you need to think about in relation to health. So it's just finding that balance.
The longest one, it wasn't a fast, but it was a 5-day raw food cleanse. This was like 12, 15 years ago I did like a 2 or 3 a couple times, and I was not eating clean like I eat now. It was like going to the bars all the time, like living my best life. And so then that's why it was so difficult. And then I did the 5-day, and then of course there's always modifications. Like you can have oats in one. Now I won't even touch oatmeal. But yeah, I think the 5-day raw food cleanse, and I just remember that being so difficult because I was eating like shit. And then you go from that, like a huge extreme, and I didn't really know anything about mindset yet then either. Now my life is like completely different. But when you're doing your fast, are you having just water, or do you drink tea, or like, what are you having? Absolutely nothing, or?
So I used to do water only.
Okay.
Or water and black coffee.
Okay.
And so the true definition of fasting, and I talk about this in the book, I mean, if you're really talking about it, just be water and electrolytes. I think anytime you're going to do longer than 24 hours, you want to have electrolytes.
Oh, yeah.
Your body needs it. But now, usually what I do is I will do exogenous ketones while I'm fasting. And I have just found that it makes me a lot more consistent. Like if I can use that throughout the fast, and along with electrolytes and tea or coffee, like no other calories besides what's in the exogenous ketones, it just makes it
easier,
more sustainable for you. Yeah. And so if I do it every month, that's more important to me than if I do it exactly perfectly, because sometimes I'll hear people criticize that. Well, if you're having that, that's not exactly a fast. I'm like, well, again, autophagy is a continuum, but I'm like, well, I'm doing it every single month, and I have now for it'll be 30 in a row every single month in August that I've done a 60-hour fast. And the only reason I've been able to do that is because I do it slightly assisted with the ketones. Otherwise, I don't think I'd be that consistent.
But that makes so much more sense. And how many other people are not consistent? They've probably done it 3 times and then they quit.
Right. And so I'm like, well, criticize all you want, but it works for me, and it makes me be able to do it. And I think that really that's the most important thing. And because that's what people say with fasting too. Like one of the things people say is like, oh, I can't have black coffee. I just got to have some cream in it. I'm like, well, hey, if that's what's going to make you do it, have a little cream in your coffee. Now, you really don't want to go over 50 calories, because that's at the point at which it really starts to tell the body to kind of quit the autophagy process, or at least that's what they think. But yeah, if having a splash of cream in your coffee makes you make it another 12 hours or 24 hours to get all these wonderful benefits from fasting, I say go for it. I mean, that's the problem with health stuff overall. People get like really rigid in their thinking. And I'm like, hey, let's just be realistic. Let's get people on a healthier path. And, it all evolves over time once you start doing that stuff.
I agree. And I think the magic word here is modified. Everybody just needs to find their own modified version, what works best for them, and then they'll feel more comfortable. It's more sustainable. They'll be able to go the 30 months like you.
Exactly. that's it. It just makes you more consistent. So I'm all for it.
I love it. Now, what do you have coming out that we can expect from you, and where can we find you online? Where are you spending most of your time these days?
So what's coming up is I gotta meet with the publishers still with the marketing department. I'm not quite allowed to say like the name of the book and stuff, but it's a cookbook.
Yay!
It'll be out in July, and I'm really excited about it. Obviously, having these book babies in the world, as you know, having done it, it's a very scary thing, but at the same time, it just my mission, as you already know, is to just help people feel better. Mm-hmm. And so if I can put out content that supports them in that, that's really what I'm about doing. And, some people are still just love books, and I've always been a reader. And so for me, the book is like a very natural thing. I mean, I've had the website and a lot of online content for a long time, but putting it in a book form is quite a different thing.
Oh yeah.
So that's coming. Obviously, if you get on my newsletter, you'll be the first to know when I am allowed to talk about it, and probably on my podcast as well. As far as social, I mean, I'm kind of on all of them, and it's very consistent. It's Heal Nourish Grow everywhere. Probably Instagram, I'm the most active. Like if you want to see what I'm eating on a day-to-day basis and that sort of stuff, I'm always in my stories. But yeah, pretty much Heal Nourish Grow everywhere.
I love it. I'm so excited for your new book, and I've been working on my second one as well, and it's definitely different. And it's crazy when you have one, you think that the next one's going to be a breeze, and it's definitely not the case. I don't care what anybody says.
Of love.
I know.
I don't think people appreciate that.
I know. And everybody has their own process too, which is nice, because when you speak to other podcasters and authors, like you and I have known each other for a while, like it's nice to just like go back and forth. Like, does this even make sense? Like, should I go this way or not? Like, it's just nice to bounce ideas off of each other. Cheryl, thank you so much for coming on the show. I appreciate your time, and I cannot wait to see this new book of yours. And you guys, make sure you go follow Cheryl online and sign up for that newsletter so that you can be the first one to get all of her exciting news first. Thank you, Cheryl.
Kelly, thank you so much for having me. I appreciate you so much.
Thanks so much for tuning in to Kellyanne Cares, a one-of-a-kind show created to motivate, stimulate, educate, and inspire you. And I hope that happened for you today. As I mentioned in the intro, I would love your feedback on today's episode. Head to Apple Podcasts, YouTube, or your favorite podcast app to leave a review for the show. I would truly appreciate it. For more information on myself, the show, my book, and the programs, products, and services I've created, visit kellyanngorman.com. While you're there, be sure to sign up for my weekly newsletter, join the podcast community, and check out the brands I'm currently loving. Let's continue today's conversation. You can connect with me on Instagram, TikTok, and Facebook at Kellyanne Gorman Official. All my other social handles will be available for you in the show notes. If you have a product, brand, story, or service you would like to share on the show, send me a message on kellyanngorman.com today. As always, thanks for listening, sharing, and reviewing. I wouldn't be here without you, and I'm so grateful I get to do what I love each and every day. Wishing you a happy, healthy, positive, and productive day, and I'll talk to you again soon.